Well, welcome everyone to what is this today? March 22nd. I told you January, February, and March, we're going to go really fast, right? March is marching on and it's almost coming to an end. But it's been great. Oh, yeah. Welcome to, that's right. I have to finish that. Welcome to Monday equals MC squared. And C stands for Chris and M stands for Masami. And our last name is Covey. So we are calling it the Monday equals MC squared. So welcome. And this is the part 3 of the similar, but we're going to go into different topics, but nutrient deficiencies that we experience through taking medications, and maybe we'll go into other Q&A as well. But let's get all grounded first and settle into the space, please. So feel your feet, maybe roll your shoulders a little bit, come back to your body. It's important that you take some time to be 100% in you, okay? Most of the time, we're just kind of pulled into different directions. So just take a moment, be 100% here for you. For your breath, nothing else. You don't need to do anything else, just to be here and breathe. And if it's comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. If not, just keep your eyes slightly lowered, so your eyelids are slightly lowered, looking ahead. And as you breathe in and out, just noticing the space around you first, maybe the warmth, the temperature in the room, how that feels on your skin, on your cheeks, on your hands. And setting the intention, aspiration. That's your focus right now. What are you aspiring to do? That's the breath. As you breathe in, feel that intention and aspirations come in. Then as you exhale, sink deeper into your body. Exhale takes you deeper in your body. Feeling your sitting bones, your kneecaps, down your shins to the bottom of your feet. You may have things to do list that's going through your mind, but put that aside. Just be here 100% for you. And as you breathe, see if you could pause at the end of your exhale for a moment. Doesn't have to be a long pause or anything, but just consciously pausing. The more you can create the pauses between the noise of the world and the noise of your mind, that's when you get to heal your mind, your brain. Your brain cells will love that moment of silence and the stillness. And each time you exhale and you come back into this body deeper and deeper, maybe listen into the body. Maybe there's a part of your body that would like to have a quiet conversation with you. That's so quiet you didn't actually hear it, that it was whispering to you. It could be that maybe your right knee joint is talking to you that you didn't hear. It could be the left wrist that's been bothering you, but you've been ignoring it. Or all of a sudden you notice that, wow, I'm actually thirsty and I have forgotten to drink water today. Or you just notice that wow, I have not been breathing very well today. Just a couple more sets of breaths on your own. Dropping into your body as you exhale. And when you feel ready, begin to slowly introduce the light coming back into your windows, your eyes, and coming back to the space. Well, thank you for taking that 100% of your connection back to yourself, because we are all feeling like we're being pulled in very different directions. And we don't take the time to do that, to just be here for who you are 100%. So that's a great practice, to just kind of drop into your body as you exhale. All right. Chris, you have anything to add before we go into some topics we're going to talk about today?
Just wanted to pick up on what you mentioned before about aspiring and aspiration. And you know, if you've listened to us talk much, that we both like to pull apart words. And so if you look at the meaning of the word aspire, it means to breathe towards something. So what you're doing is you're directing your breath. You're directing what, since ancient times, people would be considering your mind or your spirit, and you're putting them all together in one aligned action. So in a way, this practice that we do anytime we sit and breathe it's aligning all of our energies towards something. And so we can bring our mind into it as well by having that aspiration. And it could just be something as simple as, may I pay attention to my breathing? Doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but it helps to direct and align. So I just wanted to make that comment before we dive into our topics for today. Oh, I can't hear you.
I muted myself.
That's why. All right.
I wanted 100% of your voice to be heard. So, all right. Quick announcement, couple announcements. I think I forgot, Chris, I put it upstairs and I forgot to grab it. But one is I'll be on John Burgos's Beyond the Ordinary show free interview this Wednesday. So please sign up. And I sent that link to you this morning. And then I actually just sent the reminder of this call just 1 minute before we started. So you will get it again. So please sign up. And obviously you can ask me questions on those calls as well. So John and I talked today, and then we're very excited to connect. And then was there something else? I can't remember.
Well, that's the big one. I don't know if you want to mention any upcoming courses yet, or if you want to come back to that.
Nah, we'll wait on that. I mean, I'm creating a really cool course.
I'm going to put up, just for those of you that haven't already figured this out, or if it's your first time here, if you haven't visited the website, I'm putting it up right now in the chat, just masamicubby.com. And you can find out information about the call coming up on the Beyond the Ordinary show with John Burgos. That's on there on the events, just on the homepage. And also any other upcoming courses or replay videos. That's one place you can also find all of these videos that we do with, that we post up on YouTube.
Okay, that's great. And then, yeah, I do have an upcoming course, but it's not till May, but I'm really excited about it. And it's about releasing and receiving, but it's all about the weight loss resistance. I don't want to talk about weight loss as in like a short-term weight loss issues, but like a long-term weight loss resistance. That's when I'm going to go into different saboteurs, from emotional saboteurs, psychic saboteurs, physiological saboteurs, and hormonal and brain-oriented saboteurs. So I'm creating 5-week course on that. That will start in May. So if you're interested in, you can look at it on our website. Okay. And before I start, I was going to go into the nutrient depletion topic today, but I just wanted to kind of take a moment, and as half Asian American that I am, I wanted to just, I don't know if I want to go into a huge detail about the recent shootings, but, I don't think I don't want to just like skip over that topic either, because I think that's what happens to a lot of Asian racism, the racism that the Asians experience, particularly in the Western society, is that we kind of skip over that quite a bit, because I think a lot of Asian Americans, we tend to hold in and we tend to not speak up about it as much. And, there's a racism within the racism too. And I think within different colors and different ethnicities and different people in this world, I'm not saying that the Asians don't speak up, but we do speak up less. So I just wanted to take this forum to say just a few things. It didn't surprise me, but at the same time, what surprised me actually was what the government's response was, that they needed to investigate whether this was a hate crime or not. And I get that legally, we can't judge anyone till they're proven guilty, and we have to go into much more detail to figure out if this was indeed hate crime. But the fact that we have to kind of talk about that in that sense, when I know it was a hate crime. So that was a little bit shocking to me, and it didn't surprise me at the same time. But I just wanted to give you an interesting story. This happened about 5-6 years ago, wasn't it, Chris? And she is in her 70s, and she happened to be civil rights. What would you call her? Like civil rights movement?
Just that she was a very active person in the civil rights movement, from the government side, as well as from the helping to build institutions around supporting people who were being impacted by a lack of civil rights back in the 60s.
And she marched with Dr. King, and yeah, she was very active in that. But it was 5-6 years ago. We had them over. We had her over at our house, and then we were talking about racism. And then, I explained to her that I lived in the most northern part of Minnesota, that's considered to be the Appalachia of the North. So it's like a mining country. And that's where I moved to soon after I moved from Japan. And there was a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment during the time that I was living there. And I witnessed a lot of kind of a overt, it wasn't too hidden, really. Nobody drove Japanese cars up there. If you did, the car was going to be smashed to pieces the next day. So I experienced a lot of that. My mom did too, when she would come and visit and things like that. But anyway, we were talking about this, and there was this one incident that my family experienced. I mean, we experienced a lot of it in Japan and the US, but so we were having this conversation, and she just looked at me really perplexed. She's like, you experienced racism in this country, like as in United States? And I was a little bit shocked to hear that, because maybe in her mind, the racism was maybe more, towards Blacks and maybe different, maybe others, but not towards the Asians. I don't know where she was exactly coming from, but that kind of surprised me. And I think there's a hidden side of the racism that we don't pay enough attention to. So this one was, this incident really brought it up again. And I think a lot of us Asian Americans are speaking up more and more. And I think that's what we need to do, because there was an email that came from National Geographics, and then at the end, it was about the Asians coming together, and it says today's topic is breaking a habit of Asian hate. And at the end, there was this short quote that said, when you have some of these components that are in the soil, meaning like hatred, do you ever get them out completely? She asks. No, you have to constantly till the land. You have to constantly cultivate something better. So I guess that's kind of what we're all needing to do, and, continuously change the soil. And I think this is a good segue to bring it back to our body, that we can't change the soil of your body until you go and take a look at the terrain of your body. So when we talk about nutrition and supplements and medications and what gets depleted, a lot of people will email us and say, or like ask us on the chat, so should I be taking B6 then? Or should I be taking X, Y, and Z for my condition? But it's kind of like the tilling the soil. You need to go in there and figure out, well, why are you having all these symptoms? Why you're having these issues? So I had a call this morning with one of my clients, and she said, should I go get a testing for my hormones? And I said to her, hormone testing is like a snapshot of that moment. And I want all of you to know that anytime you do a blood test, salivary test, hormone test and things like that, unless you are having a doctor test you for 30 days straight, 3-4 times a day, you're not going to get the full picture of what's going on in your body, because your blood is constantly adjusting. Okay. And then hormones are constantly adjusting from morning to night. And then also if you're menstruating, then after your menstruations, your progesterone could change, or, your estrogen can change. So when you check them, it's going to make a huge difference too. So if you're having hormonal issues, number one, you need to look at the soil, what's going on inside you, your terrain, and not get so caught up in, I have to fix and dial down, dial up. We're not levers, right? Like push and pull kind of thing. Just because the estrogen is low, you're going to give your estrogen. Or if your progesterone's low, I'm going to do that. Or, oh, my testosterone has come down, so I'm going to start taking testosterone shots. I work with a lot of people like that, but they're still living with the issues underneath it. Their testosterone might be better, but they're still dealing with brain fog, and they're still dealing with the liver congestions, and they can't digest things. So what's going on there? Because that's what's going to help your hormones. So please don't be quick to jump to hormone therapy. If the hormones just need the support at your certain age, I'm not completely against it, but I think to jump to that conclusion too soon before tilling the soil, that's where I have the issues. So, Chris, anything to add there before we go into
Yeah,
medications?
I wanted to add the image, the analogy of the old style of film, where you had a reel of film with all of these different moving pictures, where if you speed them up and you play them in a successive way quickly enough, it looks like motion. And so if you take that analogy for blood testing, it's essentially grabbing one of those still frames from the entire movie and trying to predict what the entire movie is about based on that one frame. Okay, so that's what we're saying about that. And that's one of the reasons. That's not to say there's no value in blood testing, but there are limits to it. There are a lot of things that blood tests can show us. We just have to be careful about what questions we're asking of them. And so I wanted to make one more comparison with the body to what you were talking about with this big boiling pot of racism and all the questions about that are coming up right now. It seems to me that there's also something of an analogy to autoimmunity, where our body, when we have an autoimmune condition, is essentially having difficulty identifying self and other, and distinguishing what is an outsider, what is a danger, what is a non-self that it needs to protect against, and what is self that needs to be nourished and promoted and supported. And it seems like we're in that mode right now, that we're having a hard time identifying as a society what is self, and seeing that when we are having these reactions to others that are in a sense self because they belong to the same society as us, that's what we're doing, is we're feeding this fire and inflammation of racism. Just like in our bodies, when we get tipped out of balance and we lose that ability to discern at a cellular level, we develop autoimmunity. And so it's a sick condition, it's a disease condition. So let's just keep that in mind and continue to look at ourselves carefully from that standpoint of how can we nourish the whole of us. So maybe we can jump into the topic of the day now. You're muted.
This is, basically what we've been trying to do, right? It's what's inside is what's outside of us. What's above, so below kind of idea that it's used a lot in the spiritual community, but sometimes I feel like we just kind of skip over the body. And a lot of the work that I'm doing around cosmic flow and bringing the brain and the bile and the breath and the bacteria and, the boundary issues and so on and so forth. What's happening with so many species dying and going extinct in the outside world right now with animals and insects and birds, and that we're losing species left and right. Well, we're doing the same thing inside our bodies too. And we talked about that a little bit last week with the antibiotics, and how antibiotics are basically carpet bombing your whole gut, right, indiscriminately. And just, I said some doctors are starting to tell you to take probiotics after you take your antibiotics. But what we emphasize is that you have to work on your terrain before you even think about taking antibiotics. And if you are heading into some surgeries and things like that, there's a prep that you must do before you go into the surgery. And you will most likely be asked to take the antibiotics after that. Then, you want to till the soil, make sure that's ready to take the antibiotics. If you have to do that, then, at least you have some forest that you've planted and you got trees. And so you don't lose as many trees inside you. So I can't help it but to connect that with what's inside is what's outside. So anyway, you know me, I can go down that rabbit hole. So we'll start with, so we worked on antacids, right? And we worked on antibiotics. We did the antidepressants. And so we're going to go into diabetic medications. So metformin is a big one. Anything else, Chris, that you can think of in the other medications and diabetes?
Yeah, I'm about to put up a short list right now. I'll just pop it into the chat. And these are some of the more common brand names that you see: Actos, metformin, Glucotrol, and Avandia. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the specific nutrient depletions that come about if you find yourself on one of these medications. And then we can also mention one or two things that are clinically shown to be, at least in terms of a comparison with metformin, as effective with the control group as the study group. So we'll come back around to that.
Okay, you want to do that a little later? Okay. Yeah. So if you're taking any of these medications, I mean, first of all, let's just go into the diabetes. But type 2 diabetes is definitely a lifestyle disease, right? As many of you already know this. And we're starting to say that the Alzheimer's is the type 3 diabetes. And they're starting to say some other, like a brain inflammation and things like that, are type 4 diabetes. So it's all very much connected to the blood sugar dysregulation, how you live, what your lifestyle's like. And then it's also connected to the exposure to toxins. So you definitely want to look at aluminum is a big one I see. Lead is another big one I see with people with diabetes. So those are the things that you want to look at. How do I eliminate some of these heavy metals? The best way to get rid of diabetes and diabetes with lead that I'm reading up on these days that's really interesting and fun is that the lead you can actually begin to eliminate through good stools and all that, but sweating. Sweat is actually one of the best things you can do to get rid of lead. And many of you are called lead generations. So if you grew up in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and into the 60s, you're the lead generation, okay? And the younger generation, so Gen Gen Z's?
I would
Gen
say
Z's.
X. I would say X and millennials.
Millennials are more of a
Gen X starts to get into the
mercury.
Yeah, and then the more recent Gen Zs are more of aluminum
and
plastics. Yeah.
But however, aluminum is like pretty evenly spread all across the generation. So aluminum is, believe it or not, it's one of the easier heavy metals to get rid of from your bodies. But the worst one is actually lead is pretty difficult. I would say mercury is one of the hardest ones to get rid of from your body. But everybody's got it. It's not a question of, do I have heavy metals? Like some people contact me to do the hair tissue mineral analysis because they want to find out if they have heavy metal toxicity in their bodies. The question is, you have heavy metals in all you. Like I've never met a person, including myself, that doesn't have heavy metals, okay? So you want to definitely incorporate some sweating and movement back into your life. And if you are like a constipation queen like I am, okay, I have to work on my constipation constantly, right? Then you need to really focus on how do I move the bile flow so that I can poop and then so that the liver is detoxing. Those are going to be very important. And that does come back to usage of metformin and diabetes drugs, because we are seeing connections with the heavy metals, with obesity, heavy metals with microbial issues. So you don't have a lot of microbes that are large varieties and things like that. You need a variety of microbes, okay? Those, you do need to make those connections. So it's lifestyle plus these heavy metals and lacking in microbes. And one of the reasons why we lack in microbes far less than our grandmothers and great-grandmothers' age, okay, that time, is the soil's depleted. That's number one. But also in the United States, on average, we eat anywhere from 15 to 17 kinds of foods in our lifetime, okay? 15 to 17 variety of foods. Do you know how little that is, everyone? Do you know? I think you could put a couple more zeros behind that in terms of how many things you can possibly eat on this earth. So if you go to the grocery store and buy the same thing every time you go there and you say, well, I buy kale. And then, they're like, I eat kale. I'm like, okay, stop eating kale. Okay. I stopped eating kale for like a couple of years because I got so sick of him. Kale chips, kale this, kale that. It's like, I'm like, stop with the kale, people. Eat other things, other veggies. But then, here's the kicker, everyone. Then people say, well, I eat broccoli. And then I go, okay, same family. By the way, same family. So you're eating cousins all day long: kale, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, chard to a certain extent. They're all the same cousins. They're same family, cruciferous vegetables, okay? You get kind of a similar nutrients. What about the asparagus? What about parsley? What about cilantro? What about celery roots? What about napa? Well, napa cabbage is a cabbage, but eating different veggies. Go to a different store, like an Asian market, okay, Middle Eastern market. Go get something different. So that's what I mean by variety, okay? Because when you get the variety, you get the variety of microbes. And seaweeds, there's so many different sea vegetables out there, okay? Between Chris and I think we eat about maybe 5 different sea veggies. So, just see vegetables. Start incorporating that back into you also. So coming back to the diabetic drugs that Chris listed, they tend to kind of work with your cholesterol also and your fats. So that's going to mess up some of the very important nutrients like CoQ10. So if you're on diabetic drugs, you need to start to supplement yourself with CoQ10. Okay. CoQ10 is something that our bodies require. And so you may not need to do it every day, but I definitely do it every other day or every 4th day, 2 to 3 times a week. I get a little bit of CoQ10 because my brain loves it. And I can feel the difference. When I take it, my brain is sharp. And guess what? I took my CoQ10 today. That's why I'm like sharp tongue today than the last week. Last week, I was just like a really subdued, sweet Masami. And today's like, I'm on fire. Okay. And the other one is folate. Okay. So folate is great. Not the folic acid, but folate. Okay. And if you have like SNPs or, any kind of gene mutations like MTHFR or something like that, make sure you're doing a methylfolate, right? Methylated folate form. Folate is great. I love folate. Okay. But you could get some of these from vegetables too, obviously. And then B12. So we talked about B12 with people who are taking antacids. You need to have B12, right? B12 is such an important energy producer. B12 is actually produced in your gut also. So microbes love them, but the microbes produce them also. And it's used for so many things, but one in particular, B12 is very important for people like me that had been diagnosed with MS because it's helpful for your nerves. So I get the one that you can suck on, or maybe you could get the ones with the liquid so you can put it sublingually to absorb it into the body. So those are some of the things that I wanted to say. Chris, you want to mention?
Yeah, I'm going to put those up in the chat. And then I also wanted to mention that I want to back up just a step on a comment about diabetes, because I'm going to put this other comment in here about, if I didn't delete it, oh, there it is. So type 2, type 3 diabetes. I want to really emphasize the fact that these are considered lifestyle diseases, or sometimes they're referred to as civilization diseases. What this means is we bring them on ourselves. And as such, there's something that we can modulate and also get rid of if we change how we're living, if we're conscious of the impacts of society on us. Some of the things we talked about last week, like the depletion of nutrients in the soil. Okay, if you're minding how much sugar you're consuming, if you're minding how much fat of a particular kind, fats like fried foods and things that are processed products, those kinds of things are really big impacts on diabetic types of symptoms. So just to do a quick review, type 1 diabetes is the one that's considered genetic, although we also see that there's a factor there with, what we talked about last week, the nutritional genomics. I mentioned that last time, where there's more and more study looking at the triggering and activating of our genes that's based on what we eat. And that's what nutritional genomics is looking at. So even type 1 diabetes can be seen to have some reversal of the at least the intensity of the symptoms by changing and being more mindful of how we're eating and how we're living in our day-to-day lives. So before we even get to just zapping the symptoms, and this is always the point in our approach, however we're talking about this, whatever the condition is, we want to understand what is behind it, and are we doing things that are driving it in our own lives that are voluntary, things that are optional, things that we are essentially doing from our head. And what I mean by that is something like stubbornly following the same dietary patterns, either because, well, I've always done it this way, or I grew up doing it this way, and this is what my family has always done. It's tradition. If you catch yourself saying these things at the expense of your health, that's the definition of a lifestyle disease, where your own habits and patterns start to trap you into symptom pathways, and you start to repeat them, and they start to increase over time. So if you see something like dementia in your family, understand that that's now being classified as type 3 diabetes. Okay, it essentially comes down to how you live over time and how you're balancing things like blood sugar in your body. Okay, so I wanted to really just come back to that point, because we're not here to just simply say, here are nutrients if you have these symptoms or if you've had this diagnosis. You need to work with these things together. So you could look at it to say, well, these particular nutrients that we've mentioned, so the folate and the CoQ10 and the vitamin B12, those are great ways to help you if you've been on these medications. But in addition to that, you always have the option, anytime, to change how you're living, change how you're eating, and you can start to reverse that. I had one client who was diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, and he came to me saying, well, my dad has it, my brother has it. And so when he was diagnosed with it, we put him immediately on a dietary plan and a lifestyle program that would help him to reverse the impacts of what he was doing in terms of stress, what he was doing in terms of food. And within just a few weeks, it was actually less than 3 months, he went back for another checkup, and his blood sugar was back in the normal range where we would want to see it. And the doctor was hesitant, but the next time around, he actually removed the diagnosis. And that doesn't mean that the tendency won't be there in families. But if it is, you have to be that much more cautious about what you're doing. So those are my 2 cents on that.
Well, and then he was diagnosed with fatty liver disease, but it was a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So, and we are seeing non-alcoholic fatty liver diseases in young kids, like 8-year-olds and 13-year-olds. So, you know, that's definitely the lifestyle that we have to look at. But there's a toxic component too that we cannot, ignore either. So this is when, if you are taking any medications, please understand that that is very, very hard on your liver. So you have to take care of your liver using maybe different Chinese herbs, bitters, or, we talk about milk thistle and dandelion roots and all that, as well as doing some maybe, Ayurvedic herbs. Those are great too. But you may want to take some binders also, so that it can bind together, and then you can poop them out. Okay. If you can't poop them out, you're just going to recirculate the toxins back into your bloodstream. And then that's going to go into your lymphatic system. That's going to go back into the brain. Okay. Eating lots of fiber is going to be very important in this case, that you can digest. Okay. And did you talk about berberine?
No, but why don't we do that right now? So berberine, okay. And I'll put that in the chat. And it's often accompanied by hydrochloric acid. So it will say, let me put the whole thing in there. Berberine HCl, that's an L, not an I. That's the chemical name of hydrochloric acid. So berberine HCl is often the compounded form of the molecule of berberine, which is it's an herbal substance. It comes from a plant. And berberine in clinical studies has actually shown to be as effective, if not more effective, than metformin in terms of balancing the blood sugar levels in diabetics. So there are other things that have possible effectiveness without giving you all of the side effects and the nutrient depletions that we're talking about that come as a result of being on these medications long term. And do you want to jump to antidepressants or the antihistamines next?
Yeah. Well,
before we do that, I wanted to just comment on Richard's text or his chat comment because
I
it's
love
worth,
it. I love
it's
it.
worth
Good job,
mentioning.
Richard. You found it.
Yeah, so Richard said that he was looking for, we were talking about betaine HCl a couple of Mondays back. And so to help with the stomach acidity and the digestive process in the upper GI tract. So he went to the health food store. He was trying to get help. Clearly, this person hasn't studied this stuff that closely that worked there because they were trying to get him on hyaluronic acid, which will give you radiant skin, Richard, if you want to try it out. So if you
Well,
want to
and then
work on,
you're naked,
that's
model.
right.
So
That's
be
right. If
perfect for you, Richard.
that's right, the combination of hyaluronic, that's a tongue twister, hyaluronic acid and sunlight will definitely help you have nice radiant skin. It's not going to do much for your stomach and digestion, unfortunately. So I wouldn't try to substitute those. So I'm glad you were able to find it finally. So good,
Yeah,
good.
and then for those of you that are new and you're like, what are they talking about? Okay, please listen to what's it, 3 Monday
It
ago
was
now?
2 weeks back.
2 weeks back. Yeah, we did talk a lot about the hydrochloric acid and the importance of betaine hydrochloric acid for you to digest foods. Because without digestion, what's the point of that expensive organic foods that you're eating, right? So I'm
One
really
other quick,
glad, Richard.
yeah. So one other question from Cheryl asked if charcoal powder is dangerous if you take it with magnesium. And the thing about charcoal is kind of like, um, how could I describe it? It's like a giant magnet. So it is going to attract. It's very electrically active. Okay, so it's going to attach a lot of things to it. So it kind of sucks things into it. That's why charcoal works so well as filters for water and for air purifiers and things like that, because they're very active in terms of exchanging electrons with other elements. So charcoal will often just bind up whatever is in your gut. So it's effective in terms of grabbing things at a very gross level, gross versus subtle. It's just going to grab a bunch of things. So it could be that it will pull some of that magnesium away from your ability to absorb it. So if you're going to take charcoal, generally you don't want to take it with other supplements or with food. It's something that you don't want to even take that often because it's such a it's a pretty intense cleansing agent. So just be cautious with that.
Yeah, take it at least 2 hours away from anything and foods. So if you are planning on taking like nighttime supplements and things like that, take those first, then wait some time, and then you can take the charcoal on an empty stomach. And then I actually posted on the chat that if you go to masamicovey.com and go under the recommended products section, it's pretty much high up in the list. You will see other binders that we recommend, but one is called the Zeobind toxic binder, and it's like a powder, or I think you get them in capsules too, but those would be great for you to use as a binder. And Pectosol C modified citrus pectin. Citrus pectin is used a lot to bind things also. So you can use those things too. And you'll find the ones that I recommend on that. And then you can order it on Amazon. Okay. So take a look at it. You can do clay. Chris and I have done clay a lot when I was having major rashes. And, at the height of my MS symptoms, we were doing charcoal quite a bit. But since I think I just haven't been drawn to doing the clay, so I haven't done it, but I know there's a huge benefit to doing that. You just have to make sure the binders, you don't take them too close to food or too close to other, nutrients, right? Because it'll just suck all of it out, and then you will get them out of your stools, and you don't want to do that, right? So
I
do
want
it
to
away
jump
from
in
it.
and say that this is something we have to repeat again and again because there's an element of discernment here. And many of you have heard us talk about this if you've been listening to us talk for very long, but you really have to pay attention to your body. You have to listen to your body. And if you are blindly following advice, even from us, and you blindly follow it without checking in with how your body is feeling, what's going to happen is you're going to be using your mind to drive the bus. Okay. You need to get your mind out of the picture, actually. You need to feel what it's doing in your system. So if you're taking, I'm just going to refer to Cheryl's comment about a liver specialist recommending charcoal nightly for everyone, in quotes. Um, that kind of blanket recommendation is a little dangerous in our opinion from a clinical perspective, because everyone's different, first of all, just right now, and in 5 seconds from now, and in 2 weeks from now, everyone is different. Okay. So it's very hard to make that blanket thing. There are a few things we could say are good for everyone: water, fatty acids, amino acids, and vitamins and minerals. Okay. Everyone needs those to survive and build a body. Okay. Apart from that, it's where I'm going is just, if you do it blindly, you're going to throw something else out of balance. And what you're going to end up doing is creating new conditions, thinking that you're fixing another set of conditions. So you want to really pay attention to how you feel and not just do it. And it goes back to this idea that we have this idea, Americans in particular, we have this idea that we like money. So if $1 is good, then $10 is 10 times as good. And we do that with supplements. We do it with health foods. And we think that just by superdosing or overloading something that we're going to get the multiples of that effect. But that's not how it works. We just drive ourselves out of balance even faster. Okay.
Well, so I think it comes back to our philosophy that it's seasonal, seasonality and day to day. And when you really start to chop it down, it's moment by moment. In this moment, is this what is required of me? Is it in this moment, is this going to support me the most? And this might be a funny analogy, but we live in Colorado and we've been getting like dumped by all this snow, right? But we have this neighbor across the street that no matter how much snow we get, he's pretty much wearing shorts. But even him, wore longer pants. Was it last week we had the 2 feet of snow? He finally wore long pants, and I said, Chris, come take a look at him. He's wearing pants. So there are times you have to wear longer pants, and there are times you can do shorts. So that's how I see the charcoal to be. I hope that makes sense, Cheryl. Okay. So I would say, Cheryl, what I would do is like you just make like a commitment, say, okay, for next 2 weeks, I'm going to really work on my liver, and I'm really going to support my liver, and I'm going to do some of these herbal teas. I'm going to do bitters. I'm going to do stomach acid to support my digestion. I'm going to make sure my bile's flowing, and I'm going to do the charcoal every day for next 2 weeks. Okay. And see how you're doing, how you're pooping. Okay, things are moving. This is great. Okay, my skin is starting to get radiant and feels a lot better. My aches and pains are gone. Then you know what? Maybe around that time you say to yourself, okay, that was enough with the charcoal. I'm going to take a break from that. It's got to have a ebb and flow. Otherwise, it's just like a pure noise to the body, right? This is why in the beginning, I emphasized that we need pauses, and that we need moments of silence, and that we need the time to just 100% being in you and not doing more, but not human doing, but just to be who you are right now. So it's the same idea that hopefully you can bring into yourself. And it's a great thing to take, but not all the time. And I work with clients that have been taking oregano oil capsules forever. Like there's one lady, I was like, so how often do you do that? Oh, I've been taking it for like 12 years straight, every single day. Oh my gosh. Okay. Oregano oil is going to kill the microbes in your gut. That's what they're there for. And they will kill your fungus and yeast. Yes, but along with everything else. So there's a time for it, and there's a time for long pants, and there's a time for shorts. All right. So if you can't remember anything, remember that. Okay. So antihistamine, are we ready to go there?
Yeah, I know you want to jump right to it. I just want to say to Cheryl too, remember
Cheryl,
that
we love you. You're welcome, Cheryl.
It's on the input side too. So if you're only looking at the cleansing side of the equation, and you're not looking at what you're eating and what you're drinking, Okay, those are major factors when it comes to liver health and your whole system health. So you have to start there, because what we want to do intellectually is what's easy for us, because our brains are essentially lazy. They want to conserve energy, not have to change habits. So we like to do things in the same old way, but we have to look at what we're doing in the same old way. So we have to go into your day-to-day habits, what you're eating, and also consider that. Okay, antihistamines.
Well, and okay, now you took that road. I have to kind of go there too a
No,
little
we
bit.
gotta stay focused now.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're the one that never stays focused. All right. So just one more thing I have to say about that. Many of you have heard this talk. I talk about this all the time, but it's like a couple of years ago, I had this aha moment. I was like, wait a minute, like everybody's talking about cleanse. Everybody's talking about stripping. Everybody's talking about chakra clearing, chakra removing things. We're going to remove the external stuff. We're going to clear out. We're going to unplug. We're going to whatever. It's all about removal, removal, removal. And then I thought, okay, well, but who is nourishing you back? So to me, it's a very masculine approach. It's not male, female, as all of you know, right? We all have masculine and feminine energies in all of us, right? But it's a very masculine in its approach to constantly talk about detox, stripping, removal, clearing, shifting, and removing something that you don't want. And I started to think like, well, what about kind of bringing that back in? What about nourishment? What about giving you what your body goes, oh, that was so good. And Chris and I made this fantastic turkey bone soup yesterday. And I boiled some cabbage and chopped up some onions. And I made this like gorgeous cabbage soup. Oh my God, it was so nourishing. And that's when I felt like hugging myself. I was hugging myself with the soup. So you may want to look into that also. So hug, hug, hug. Okay. All right. Antihistamine it is, because we promised we were going to go there. So what is it? Zyrtec and Singulair. And there's a lot of over-the-counter antihistamines, aren't there? Out there, tons. One of the things about antihistamines, I mean, histamines is a big one, big topic. It has become like another hot topic in the functional medicine world, as if it's like everybody's having histamine reactions. But you know what? Number one, if you are taking antihistamine, you've got to look at your small intestinal lining and see what is irritating the lining, and making sure that your inner lining is healing through things like good diet, good stomach acid, the bile flow. And I'm a huge fan of supplements like L-glutamine, which comes from amino acid. So you might want to start to add that back in, 3 grams or so in the morning in the water, and drink it, or before you go to bed on an empty stomach is what I like. But also one of the things that gets depleted is essential fatty acids. And when the essential fatty acids is depleted because you're taking antihistamine drugs, then essential fatty acids is used by everything in your body. Okay. So you're going to find yourself going into brain fog. You are going to have a lot of kind of a brain inflammation, and your heart needs essential fatty acids. Without the essential fatty acids, you don't make good hormones either. Okay. And so on and so forth. And I'm going to throw it back at Chris, but we love essential fatty acids. So, and one more thing. Without the essential fatty acids, you don't decrease the inflammation in your body that you are trying to address through the antihistamine also.
Okay, so
I'm
ready?
done. Zip.
Okay, pop quiz. Here we go in the chat. If you know the name of an essential fatty acid, go ahead and write it in. Let's see what you all know.
Richard, we're counting on you. You're a student in this Sangha.
Let's just get a couple of examples. Okay, I
What
want to
are
make
the fatty
sure.
acids?
Okay,
Omega-3s.
omega-3. Cheryl, avocados are a lot bigger than a fatty acid. So let's break it down. We'll talk about that.
That's okay. Avocados have multiple essential
okay, we have
fatty acids.
omega-3, omega-6. Okay, somebody said DHA. That's an omega-3.
Yep.
Omega-3 and 6. Okay, good. These are the two easy ones. Does anybody know the hard one? The villain of the omega, of the essential
The
fatty
villain.
acids.
It's been a villain since the 60s. What is it? One more
And
kind.
while that answer is coming, I'm going to say, okay,
Omega 9s. Yeah,
9, 12,
9s.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Just say
Okay.
it, Chris.
I'm just gonna say it. Saturated fat. Okay. Annette got it. I think she beat me to it actually. Saturated
Thank
fats
you.
are an essential fatty acid. It's really, really important that you understand what this means. Anything that's called essential in the nutrient world means your body cannot synthesize it from other food ingredients. So essential fatty acids are things that you absolutely need and that you absolutely can't get from any other source than diet. Okay, so saturated fat is one of them. And just a couple of examples of things that are made out of saturated fat that you would die instantly without: all cell membranes and brain tissues are made primarily out of saturated fats. Okay, so when you're thinking about fats and fatty acids, these are the kinds of things that are being depleted by antihistamines because they disrupt your body's ability to do things like Masami mentioned, the inflammation and anti-inflammation. And just like anything that works on a system of balance, if you don't have both sides of that equation working, you're going to get an imbalance, either too much inflammation or too much anti-inflammation. Most people almost never have too much anti-inflammation. Okay, I'm going to just say one more thing about this fatty acid combination that relates back to the diabetes, is that when people are eating high sugar diets, without getting into all the chemistry of it, saturated fats, the essential fatty acids, get converted. I mixed that up. Omega-6 fats, in the presence of too much sugar in the body, in the blood, are going to convert to the form of fatty acids that cause inflammation. Okay, our bodies have two pathways to cause anti-inflammation to happen and one pathway to cause inflammation to happen. And it needs both to regulate that system. But when you have too much sugar in your blood and too much insulin, it's actually the presence of insulin that triggers it. It causes your body to create two inflammatory pathways instead of two anti-inflammatory pathways. So you find yourself chronically in a state of inflammation when you have blood sugar that's out of balance. Okay, we should probably cap it there and maybe take a couple last questions.
Well, I think, just to kind of give you guys more of a down to what does that even mean, what Chris just said. So we are exposed to too much omega-6 in the most diets right now, okay? So what that means, the omega-6s you could get from lots of like liquidy oil. And for those of you that have been following me, how much I cannot stand the liquidy oils like canola oil, soy oil, all kinds of seeds oil, sunflower seeds, safflower seeds, hemp seeds oils. Hemp seed is not omega-6, but more of omega-3s. But they basically go rancid easily. But do you remember these guys that I know you know this, when you used to get those cake mixes and then it says 2 cups of canola oil, okay, and 2 eggs, okay, and you got the sugar going in there and then a terrible flour, right? And you mix it all together and make your cake mixes, right? That is probably one of the worst things you could ever eat, okay? So if you're still starting your morning with like a blueberry muffin thinking, oh, I got some blueberries because it's got some fiber in it, stop the nonsense, please. Okay, because that's like literally eating what Chris just said. Omega-6 of the fats coming in with the sugar and the flour and spikes your blood sugar. And then it is one of the worst things you can eat because the omega-6's oil is already very rancid. So you're eating foods that are going to age you. Your skin is going to deteriorate. Your eyes are going to deteriorate. Your nails are going to start to chip, and your brain is going to start to go numb. Okay. So remember this tofu-like things, the 3 pounds of tofu inside your brain. Okay. That is made out of cholesterol. So, for those of you that thought the tofu-like substance was not saturated, it is. That is your brain. Brain is like a tofu-like thing that is actually a saturated fat, cholesterol. Okay,
Let me jump in here for a second. There are a couple of things. First of all, Cheryl, you're on my favorite list because you use dag nabbit, and I have not seen anybody. I say that always jokingly to Masami, and she was always like, "What does that mean?" It's like, well, anyway, I had to explain it to her in terms of Little House on the Prairie and their what's that phrase that they use on there all the time. But Dad, burn it. So dag nabbit. I love that one. Okay.
Cheryl,
also,
I didn't even, she's like, did she say that she misspelled avocados? I didn't even notice it, Cheryl.
Okay. Oh yeah. And the avocados, avocado oil has a lot of omega-9s in it. Same with olive oil, oleic acid, things like that, they're helpful to the body, and they sort of ease the synthesis of some of the other fatty acids our bodies make, but they're not essential in the sense that we can make the stuff that they help to do without them, if that makes sense. And I wanted to say very quickly, Mary Barb mentioned MCT oil. I just want to say very quickly, MCT oil stands for medium chain triglycerides. And all that means is it's a small component. It's a short chain fatty acid that you can absorb easily. Not essential, comes from usually palm oil or coconut oil. It's a fractionated part of it. And it's helpful if you want to get an energy boost, because your body loves fat energy as its fuel source. But it's not essential in the same sense that we were talking about. And same with butter. Butter's a great source of saturated essential fatty acid.
And butter is a great combo of omega-3 too, and then saturated fat. And also butter has vitamin A, D, E, and K. So if you're missing all those fat soluble vitamins, great. We love butter.
Let me just say there have been several questions on the chat about topics that we might cover. Well, if we do this long enough, we're not going to run out of topics. Let's just say that there's always something to talk about. Fats are a great topic. We may come back to that someday. There's a lot to say about. In fact, fats could probably be done over several sessions because there's so much.
We have been sprinkling fat topics like all throughout our Monday calls. So you can listen to probably other ones too and find out where I just go off onto a tangent about butter and cooking oils. And just please, people, stop buying canola oil. Please, just that I beg you. And corn oil, soy oil. And if you think you're buying the organic food and organic boxed up foods or potato chips, and you look in the back and it says safflower oil or sunflower oil, put it back. Okay. If you don't want to age quickly and you don't want to have aches and pains in your body, then put that back. Okay. Because that is not healthy fat once it goes through a heat. All right.
So lots of questions. We need to wrap up. It's like all these great questions are coming up in the chat. We can't cover all these right now, but I'm seeing a lot of things about different oils. So we'll need to come back and talk about fats in another call because there are several fat questions that have just come rolling in. So we'll have to come back to this. That's even going to include eggs a little bit because of the whole question about cholesterol that comes up with eggs. Angela, we have not yet covered thyroid medication specifically, so that's something that we may touch on at some point in the future. And I just want to say there's one other question from Jamila about I saw the word cookbook and immediately one popped into my mind, but then I saw that it was a request for a vegetarian cookbook, and immediately the thought that I had is, are you looking for nutrition or are you looking for food that tastes good? Because and I'm not joking, actually. I'm not joking.
Chris, we can't go down. We can't go down that rabbit hole with the vegetarian cookbook.
No, I'm not going to get into that. But
we'll keep these 50+ people hostage if we go down that road.
I'm not going down the road. I just wanted to say, a question that anyone who is serious about being vegetarian or vegan, you basically have to become a food scientist. And if you have that level of commitment to make sure that you're getting what you need every single meal, you can probably pull it off. But I don't think I could responsibly give a cookbook recommendation knowing that most people aren't going to do that. So, but if you want one that isn't vegetarian oriented, we can come back and talk about that another time.
So yeah, quickly, Susanna, sunflower oil, it's good if it's not cooked, but if it goes through heat, I don't touch that stuff because it goes rancid.
All right, people are clamoring for nourishment over just tasting good vegetarian food. So I'm going to put down Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon. Okay.
Here it is. Here it is.
It's going to give you a real insight into...
Chris,
yeah.
I'm holding it up.
Okay.
Got it? All right.
All right. And with that, we should probably get back to wrapping up, which we've been trying to do for the last 10 minutes. We're not very good at it.
Well, and I've been asked so many times, can you share your cooking? And like, you know, do you have any cooking tips or cookbooks and things? And I just, you know, someday, maybe I have like, when I have nothing to do, I will work on it. But the fact is that that day hasn't come yet. And also, I'm one of those, I love cooking. Chris knows I'm really actually, I don't know, I should even say this about myself as a Japanese person. It's like you're supposed to be humbled. But the fact is, I'm a very good cook. So I don't follow any cookbooks. I don't like rules. I grew up with rules in Japan. Like the skirt length had to be this, and then the hair length had to be that. And you had to have this kind of even the white underwear. Everybody had to wear white underwear. What? So when I have to follow a cookbook, I don't do well. So I'm just like, throw in a little bit of that, then throw in a little bit of this and what's in my refrigerator. That's how I cook. So I haven't come up with a cookbook yet, but someday when I have
we have a collection of photos of one-hit wonders. So it's like,
okay, well, maybe next week we'll share you some.
No, it's funny because Masami we'll sit down to eat and she'll say, "Oh, you should take a picture of that." And I say, "Well, why? We're never going to reproduce it." I mean, I could come somewhere in the ballpark, but this is a one-time thing because we're always doing that. We both cook that way, so that's right.
You're welcome.
It's like mixing paint colors. That's right, Clemmy. Cooking is like
mixing. All right. We better let these people go so they can have their lives. Okay. Thanks, Trisha. Good to see you. Hi. Thank you, Angela. And welcome to new members. Jim, good to see you. Thanks for being here. And then, I love all these questions. So we'll continue because we've only gotten to anti-something medications. We haven't even gotten to the B's. We haven't gotten to the D. Did you see that? We're going to go alphabetically. So we have long ways to go. So we will be here. So we'll see you next Monday as, we will be here. I think that's
wait. That was one of the announcements. We're skipping a week.
Well, I think we're going to finish it. And
okay. All right. We were going to skip a week. I guess we're not. Okay.
We're going to do it again and we'll take a little break after that. But we'll be back next Monday. Right. Otherwise, I think they're going to be like, what happened to them? So, okay.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.